First of all, I wanted to share my testimony. Not many, probably nobody in here has actually ever really heard my testimony. When I grew up in a Christian home, I was very fortunate to be able to grow up in a Christian home. From the time I can remember, we went to church. My dad, he wasn't a pastor when I was a kid. We were just regular church members. My dad, went and became a deacon in our church, and so we grew together as a family in ministry. But when I was 5 years old, my dad sat down with me, and he just had a tract from the church that we were attending, Desert Baptist Church. And I don't remember all the specific details, but there's other parts I remember, and I do remember not wanting to go to hell. I remember my dad sharing with me about hell, about heaven, and at 5 years old, all I knew is I wanted to go to heaven. And I prayed and received Christ at the age of 5. We lived in California. I grew up in Southern California, and this part I don't really remember, but my mom would tell me, she would especially remind me in my teen years of this, that when I was a kid, I would pray a lot. And even at 5, 6, I would pray a lot. And she would have people in our church who would specifically ask her to have me pray for something. Sorry. And so I just remember being a kid growing up in a Christian home, growing up praying and learning, to pray for your food and pray for other things. And my mom told me when I was older that, she would literally have people calling and saying, can you have Justin pray for this? Because when he prays, they can see that God listens to his prayer, and that, and so that when I was older and she told me that was, I was going through a time in my life. I'm going to kind of skip, because from the time I was little to my teen years, I grew up, I became a teenager. But there was a point in my teen life, I got into junior high, into high school. I was going to a private school, a private Christian school, and I don't know if any of you have ever gone to a private Christian school, but it's not always the best thing. People think, oh, you went to a Christian school, you had it easy. But the Christian school I went to was kind of like the dumping ground for the kids who got kicked out of all the other schools. And so we had our Christian kids who grew up in church. We had our troubled kids who, grew up in torn, messed up families, and all meshed together trying to teach everybody to be a Christian. We were getting taught, the Bible and everything like that. But unfortunately, I saw a lot of my friends and a lot of people from the Christian group, from those of us who grew up in a Christian home, ended up getting pulled away into this other group. And I'll be honest, a lot of the people I went to high school with today, with Facebook and stuff, you get to see how people are doing. The majority of them aren't even living for Christ, much less even attending church. And so, it was hard. It was rough. I went, getting older, you get this sense of I'm getting older. I should be allowed to do more stuff. I should be able to get out and do more things. And my parents trusted me a lot. They had a lot of trust in me, and I betrayed that trust when I was in high school. I did a lot of things that betrayed their trust. And unfortunately, it's a lot of times you just make those decisions where you think, well, I'm out with my friends, it's no big deal, it's one little thing, it's one little party, it's one little, it's no big deal. And then the next thing turns into the next thing, turns into the next thing. And that happened from probably about the time I was 8th grade, freshman year, until about my sophomore year. We had, there was a Rebecca St. James, the singer. She came and did a concert where I grew up in the town in the Imperial Valley. And to me, it was concert. Yeah, there were a group of us went, and we were like, okay, we'll go. And it was, the music, it was good and stuff. But the thing that was really neat was there was a point in her concert where she stopped and she spoke and was really talking about, one, about salvation, and two, about those who are saved getting right with God. And something was just nagging me that night, and I had walked forward because they had the time for people to go forward, and a friend of mine, kind of a guy I looked up to because he was one of the youth pastors in our area, and as like a good Christian on the outside, I actually attended some different youth groups and Bible studies and stuff, so I knew a lot of people, and he pulled me aside. We actually we went outside, and he was just starting to talk to me, and his name's Chris Nunn, and I remember Chris just telling me, he's like, Justin, I don't know what you do in your personal life. I see you at youth group, I see you in Bible study, but I know God wants more of you. He wants you to be sincere. He wants you to, there's something in your life that you're pretending, and God wants you to be serious. And the truth is, Chris didn't know about my life. Chris didn't know about my other life. He saw me in youth group. He saw me in church. But he didn't know that I would go out Saturday nights, Friday nights, hang out with my friends and do stuff. And that night, Chris, to this day, Chris doesn't really understand the impact he had, God using him in my life. And I just knew that at that night, because Chris was sharing with me some verses in the Bible, and actually a verse that I'm going to read later is one of the verses that he shared with me that really impacted my life at that point, and helped me understand that, I'm a Christian. I grew up in a church, and I just did the church thing because that was my family. That's what we did. You went to church Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday night. Anytime you just went to church, and he helped me understand that I can follow the church thing. I can do the church thing. I can follow my parents' faith, which is what I was doing. I was riding on my parents' faith. I was riding on their conviction to be in church. I was just doing it to follow them. And he helped. And at that moment, God just really got a hold of me and said, it's not about your parents' faith, about your parents' conviction. It's about you and me. It's about your conviction, your faith. What do you have? Where's our relationship? And at that point, I really began to understand that, my parents have put, they take me to church, they force me to church sometimes, they drag me there, and I don't always want to go, but I have been spending my whole life living off their faith, living off their convictions. And for me to really have a relationship with God, it has to be my faith. It has to be my convictions. I can't just live off of them anymore. And at that point, Chris had prayed, Chris and I prayed together, and I cried, he cried, and I tend to cry a lot. But it was a turning point in my life. At that point, like I said, I was going to a lot of Bible studies, and I got more hungry, and I would listen in Bible study. I would start reading my Bible more about myself. I even got to the point to by the time I was a senior in high school, me and several of my friends who actually went with me that night to that concert, there was one particular Bible study that we had in the Imperial Valley that was made up of people from a lot of different churches. We all went on Tuesday study. We called it Tuesday study. And we all came together and we got into the Word. Well, the guy who was leading that kind of mentored some of us. And it finally got to the point to where every week one of us was doing the study. He was there, but he had us doing the study and that was giving us great time to get into the Word and to pray and to make sure we're there. And I got into doing a Christian camp, what they call Campus Life in the Imperial Valley. It's like a Christian group that's in the public schools. I did one at my school, at the private school. During the lunch period we had Campus Life, which is games and Bible study, and God really was able to use me a lot in my later high school years. And after high school, I went off to college, had a new sense of freedom, and I'll be honest, there was a time that I drifted away. And I drifted away, but there was one conviction I always had was I was always in church. It doesn't matter where I lived, I would be in church. I had a church home. And God has graciously watched over me throughout the years. I haven't made the best decisions in my life since that time, but God is always there and He's always in control. And I pray now that as a father and a husband, that God will keep me focused, God will keep me in the Word, to be an example for my wife, to be an example for my kids, to be an example for you guys who are here in church. But so that's kind of my testimony. I had talked to Brother Will about it because it's been kind of lingering with me because I realized this year is going to be 10 years since I've been in high school, since I graduated high school. And for some people like Brother Will, that number is a long. But some people look at me and like, oh, you're still young, and I look at you guys, oh, you're still young. But
we're all young.
Yeah. It just got me thinking, and I talked to Brother Will that I remember where you guys are right now. I remember being there in high school, being a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior. I remember, especially you seniors who are making decisions on where you're going to go to college. I remember that. I remember being there and trying to make those decisions, thinking I was real mature to make those decisions. But I was telling Brother Will, there's just something God was kind of laying on my heart that I felt like I wanted to share with you guys. Because I know a lot of you who are seniors are planning on going to Christian colleges. I went to a Christian college. And just because you're in a Christian college is no guarantee that life is going to be great and you're going to have the best time. It's all about what I'm going to talk tonight. What I'm going to talk about tonight. And you have to make the decision yourself. I'm going to go ahead and read from Daniel chapter 1. You guys want to turn there? All there? Kinda, almost? Well, I'll start reading, you guys will be there, trust me. I read slow. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years. At the end thereof, they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and into tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, whom hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endangered. Then shall ye make me endangered my head to the king. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat. And as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. One of the neat things about this story is this story can be your story. Generally, what they say at this time, when Daniel and his 3 friends were taken into captivity, Bible scholars all over the place, they say Daniel was either between 13, 14 to maybe 20, 19, 20. So most people kind of settle around 15, 17, which, is you guys. You guys are that age, this is your age. Now, and the story is so neat that in that Daniel's story starts at this age. Kind of like a lot of you, and especially when you get into graduation and stuff, they tell you, life starting, and this, in reality, it is. You're beginning to. Right now, you're in the stage where you're about to go into the world by yourself and start making your own decisions, making your place in the world. But Daniel, before he got to Babylon, it says right there in verse 1 and 2 that King Nebuchadnezzar had come into Jerusalem and besieged Jerusalem. Now, besiege, anybody who doesn't know what besieging a city is, Nebuchadnezzar essentially just took his army, surrounded Jerusalem until they surrendered, because they couldn't get any food or water or anything. And this was actually the first time he would do this to Jerusalem. And once they surrendered, they took a lot of these people, a lot of the Israelites, the children of Judah, as slaves and servants. You had some that were fortunate, more fortunate than others, like Daniel and his friends, who were of royal blood, and they were taken into the king's court to be trained, to be brainwashed essentially, and trained in the ways of the Babylonians, to be, advisors and stuff for the king. Then you had others who were, beaten and sold into slavery and living in poverty and stuff. Those were the other group. Just imagine yourself at your age being ripped away from your family, being ripped away from, your life here, thrown into a completely different area, and they just are going to start pounding you with information, with ideas, with, trying to change completely who you are and what you've been raised to believe. And the scary thing is that is what's going to happen to you in the world. That's what goes on when you go out into the world. Whether you go to a Christian school, whether you go to a secular college, you're going to go out into the world, and you're going to be bombarded with ideals, different ideas, different things that people are going to expect you to believe. I mean, right now, I don't know if any of you even pay attention to the news at all, but they're in the Supreme Court. They're still fighting whether or not same-sex marriage should be constitutional, or they're fighting over all kinds of stuff that we as Christians, you as young Christians, and the people growing up in the church, you're being taught that that's not right. You're being taught that that's not scriptural, and you know that, and you believe that or not. But when you go out into the world, you're not here with your friends at church. You're not here with your family. You're not under your parents, and you get taught by people who are pressuring you. And that's what happened to Daniel. They get him